Australian manufacturers are still under pressure from high inflation and interest rates. Bega Cheese is a major user of electricity and gas, and it makes cheese and dairy products along with Vegemite and peanut butter at 7 locations around the country. I caught up with its executive chairman, Barry Irvin, on the sidelines of the Australians Global Food Forum.
Oh, Ed, look, I think it's a great opportunity for the sector to come together, and it does tend to cover all aspects of food production and manufacture, and indeed the market and retailers. So it's a good chance, quite frankly, it's a good chance to catch up with colleagues that you don't always catch up with throughout the year, but it's also good to be sharing knowledge and talking about the issues of the moment.
How much positivity is there in the agriculture sector right now? Has sentiment improved over the past few months?
Oh, look, I think there's still a reasonable level of positivity. I mean, there's a recognition of some of the challenges as well. I mean, I think the reality is that Australia is looking at very high costs of energy, high costs in manufacturing, and looking at a retail sector and indeed an Australian consumer that is fairly challenged at the moment in terms of cost of living. So there's still optimism because I think people see that we're still very well positioned for the future. We've got markets to the north of us that are still dynamic and growing, and we've got some great companies in Australia with really good knowledge of how to produce and deliver high quality food. So I think there's always optimism in a conference like this, but there's always a willingness to sort of face into the challenges that the industry inevitably faces.
Yeah, you mentioned energy prices. Obviously, you're a big manufacturer. I think you've got about 7 sites around the country. How have you been managing those higher costs of gas and electricity over the past year?
Well, the reality is, Ed, we just keep trying to find ways to be more lean, more automation, take costs out where we can. Obviously, the costs that we can control, we try and control, and the ones we can't, we absorb where we can. But equally, sometimes we have to pass on price increases as well to offset the challenges that we face in the inevitability of costs going up.
Yeah, another cost that's obviously been rising has been interest rates. They're at the highest level in 12 years. Have you noticed consumers, the cost of living affecting consumers and their retail purchasing habits across the stores around Australia?
Look, there's no doubt that consumers are looking for value at the moment. And the retailers that are here today are talking about the fact that consumers are shopping for the specials, they're shopping for the discounts, they're tending to look more at bulk products, and they're being a little more careful in their shops. So we're certainly seeing the Australian consumer take a great deal of care over their basket of products that they buy. But we're also seeing that they still those key elements that we've seen in our business as consumer trends that have been with us for a while, which is they still want convenience, they still want health and nutrition, but they are increasingly looking for value given the cost of living challenges.
And then obviously you're a big dairy company. Just how has the dairy sector been going this year? Is it better than it has been before the past couple of years, or is it kind of still going through some troubles?
So look, in terms of the dairy sector, we've seen, and people tend to talk on farm. The reality is we've had a couple of years of record prices at farm gate level, and we've seen production for the first time increase in Australia, which has been nice to see for quite a long time. And then, obviously, from a manufacturing point of view, that's made us a little bit challenged in terms of our global competitiveness and indeed imports coming into Australia. So there are still challenges within the dairy industry. We've seen a price correction on farm this year, which is obviously hasn't been welcomed by the farmers, but I think is more reflective of the global markets. So I think we're seeing an industry that continues to probably need to rationalise a little, but has probably been through its most difficult times in the last 5 to 10 years, but is more stable than what we might have described a year or two ago.
And then broadly, economic-wise, obviously inflation peaked in 2022, but it's still pretty elevated right now. Where's the biggest way you're feeling inflation in the Bega Cheese business?
Oh, well, I think it's some of those things that we talked about. It's obviously the cost of energy, it's financing costs, to a certain extent, labour costs as well. So they've all been pushing upward over the last couple of years. We probably are seeing a little bit more stability now, Ed. So not as challenged as we have been in the last couple of years, but more stable. But there's still some inflationary pressures in some of those areas that I mentioned.
And look, one thing, the opposition leader Peter Dutton sort of proposed building nuclear-powered plants across Australia by 2035. Is that something that you think would be a good thing for the power grid and energy supply?
I wouldn't profess to be an expert on energy. I think the general commentary that continues is, do we have secure, competitive baseload power in this country, or will we have it in the next 10 to 20 years? And I think that's an issue that still remains hotly debated. So I wouldn't profess to say that I could make an informed comment on what the right approach was, but I would say that the need for a more competitive energy supply for manufacturing in Australia is one thing that's being talked about a lot here today, as manufacturers identify that cost of energy is uncompetitive with other regions of the world.
And look, in the past sort of 5 years or so, you've diversified into Vegemite and peanut butter. How have they been going product-wise?
Oh, look, we've been delighted with those acquisitions. I think, Ed, probably what I would probably more generally say is that we've been transitioning from what was traditionally really a commodity agriculture and manufacturing company to a branded company, and the branded acquisitions we've made has delivered a lot more stability to our business. The Australian consumer, they're brands that the Australian consumer is extraordinarily loyal to, and really it did begin with that acquisition of Vegemite into that portfolio. Such an iconic Australian brand. I think it created the foundations for what is increasingly becoming a really strong Australian branded story.
Barry Irvin, Executive Chair of Bega Cheese, thanks for coming on the program today.
Great to chat to you, Ed.